Well, hello, guys. This is Katie with Vintage and Vinyl, back with another great reading for you today. I'm so excited to be back with the book reading that we have been doing here on my channel. We are reading a saucy novel from the 1950s called House of Flesh, and this is a pretty cool book. This is by Bruno Fischer, or Fisher, however you pronounce his name, and this is just a fantastic gold medal book. And I've talked a lot about gold medal books on my channel and on this reading, but gold medal books are pretty special because they set the industry standard in publishing, and they really were the first mass-produced paperback books after the war that made reading really accessible to the public because they weren't buying a whole bunch of hardcover books that were super expensive. So these are pretty cool. You can do a deep dive into this yourself. I'll link a great video down below of a gentleman that collects gold medal books, and he really has some great knowledge on this if you want to learn about gold medal books further. And of course, House of Flesh is a great title. Now, I got this book from Misty over at Thrifter Junker Vintage Hunter, and I've really had fun reading it. I'm telling you, this is a saucy chapter. I did a little bit of reading before I go live. I always read through the chapter and just get familiar with it a little bit. I never read ahead. I always just read a few minutes before the live starts and get acquainted with the chapter. And I have to say it's pretty saucy. So you guys are in for a real treat this Monday. We got Angela Marksberry in the chat. Yay, you're at a Monday live, Angela. That's so exciting. Definitely go follow Angela on social media. She's got a great Instagram account at A Marksberry. She posts the calendar for us every week and does a great job with that. And we also have great lives with her on Sundays. So definitely go check out Angela's YouTube channel. Linda Punky is joining us. Hello, Linda. I'm so glad you are here. That is fantastic. And I'm sure a few more people are going to be coming in. Yes, Angela's asking a great question. She says, how many chapters are left, and do you have another book? Well, I do have another book picked out. Now, we are in chapter 12, and so let me tell you how many chapters. We're almost halfway through the book. Almost. Probably by next chapter, we'll be totally halfway through. Now, there is a total of, let me see here. There's 27 chapters in this book, and we are in chapter 12. So we're almost, we're getting there. But this is a fantastic book. It's really fun, and I've enjoyed reading it. Ooh, Proud American's coming in. Hello, Proud American, my fellow digestive biscuit lover. If you don't know what digestive biscuits are, they are a really delicious British cookie, and I've gotten Delbert into that, and so we've been enjoying it. It's fun. Yeah, there is sauce in this book. There really is. Cool. I have those 2 bride books I want to send you. Yes, and maybe Angela, I can read those next. I have several books that I can read through, and I've got a spooky one. I hope maybe by Halloween we might be done with this book. Of course, I think there might be some mystery in this one too, but I do want to read some from Nancy. She sent some murder mystery books from the 40s, and I think that would be really fun to read around Halloween time. So we'll see how that goes, but they're fun. Hi, Tia Fain, coming in from Canada. Welcome. Len Dowdy is here. Hello, Len. I want to take just a few minutes. I'll let a few more people come in before we start the reading, but I am wearing a very special brooch today. This brooch was gifted to me by LJ, and I'm going to share this again in the friend mail video, but it's so beautiful. I had to wear it right away, and this is just a gorgeous brooch that she purchased from Tammy at Vintage Uprising, Texas on one of her sales. And LJ, I'm still blown away by your kindness and your thoughtfulness and the fact that you wanted to send me something. So I'm very excited about this brooch, and it is a sparkly fella. So I thought it would be just perfect for my reading today because this is a pretty saucy reading. So we need all the glitz and glamour and sauce that we can get, right? So I thought that would be fun. Let's see who else is in the chat. Oh, you like scary books too, Proud American says. That's fun. Tia Fain saying there's an Italian type of digestive biscuit too, and they're delicious. Ooh, Tia Fain, you have to let me know which one that is, and I'll have to look for it. I've had digestives, and the original kind, and then there's digestives with the chocolate on the bottom, and then there's something that's similar to digestives, but more of an oatmeal cookie called a hobnob, and that's a British thing too. Now, hobnobs are another favorite of mine. I like both. I like the digestives probably better, but Nate from New Zealand has taught us all that if you take a digestive and put blue cheese on it, it's really delicious, and then drizzle a little bit of honey, and oh, he's right, it's to die for. It's my new favorite snack. So I've been enjoying that. So we'll let a few more people come in. I want to tell you about a couple of things happening this evening in the vintage community. Tim at Over the Years is having a wonderful live sale at 8 o'clock. Tim is fantastic. He's got great items. So Josie, Tim, and Ma Dukes will be on at 8 o'clock Eastern tonight. And then, of course, Vintage Rescue Squad is on as well at 8 o'clock. I don't know if it's on Misty or Michael's channel, but it will be on one of their channels, Thrifter, Junker, Vintage Hunter, or Cult of Vintage. And then, of course, I believe George, the Antique Nomad, or Uncle Professor George, is having a premiere at 8 o'clock. So that is very exciting. I love George, and I always learn so much. So lots of split screens happening tonight for me, but I'll be enjoying all of those fun things. No, Angela says that doesn't sound good. Yeah, Angela's not a big fan of the blue cheese, and I know some people aren't, so it does depend if you like that or not. Oh, on Misty's channel. Okay, very good. Tim's got a beautiful angel for sale. Yes, he did have a live sale preview recently on his channel, so that's exciting, Proud American. I hope you get it if that's something that you're wanting. Hi, Barbie, Punk Funk Junk. I love your name. That's so fun. So Barbie's joining us. Well, we are about 6 minutes in, and I'll continue chatting here, and then I'll start the reading. Vinny, you have come to a good reading, my friend. Our fellow saucy comedian is in the house, and Vinny, you're going to like this chapter because it is one saucy chapter. All right. Well, it's so good to see all of you in the chat tonight. So good to be back doing these readings. I missed a week last week, but I'm back. So I'm sorry for the little bit of inconsistency there, but we are back with this wonderful book, House of Flesh. Now, a quick little update in House of Flesh, the last chapter that we did read, we left off with the main character, the veterinarian, Dr. Doan. He went up to New York City for a conference or some sort of a work trip, but he caught a ride with the other main character's ex-wife. And so there was going to be some time that Dr. Doan's wife, Layla, was alone with our main character, Henry. So that's exciting. So we're going to see what happens there. So, all right. Are you guys ready for another chapter of House of Flesh? I'm very excited about this. We are in chapter 12. This is just a phenomenal book. Lots of fun to read. And we got to see what happens next because there's definitely some sauce in this. So, chapter 12, House of Flesh, coming up right now. The house was dark and the dogs were quiet. I had walked all the way because my car must not be observed parked at her house. I stood on the road and listened to the silence. Had I misinterpreted her message? Had she also gone for the night, or was she at this moment on the way to my bungalow? Then what had been the meaning of the statement that she was staying at home with a non-existent book? I doused my flashlight. The new moon was still too low to help. I groped my way across the bare area and almost walked into the station wagon. Something rubbed against my leg. I knew it was Major because he was silent and friendly. She must have locked the other dogs in the barn, leaving the shepherd out as a watchdog. She wouldn't have gone anywhere except to my bungalow without driving, and Major would have escorted her if she had walked in the night. I whispered, "Hi, Major," and wondered why I whispered. His tail wagged against my leg. He was kinder than I. Almost 2 weeks ago, I hadn't let him get near Maxine. But a dog, and not a human, he treated me a lot better now than when I was coming to his house for the same basic purpose. Maybe that wasn't a nice way to put it, but a dog couldn't appreciate the distinction. The sagging porch steps creaked under my feet. The small sound was startling in the night. Distantly, a dog, no doubt Maxine, started to bark stridently, and the dogs in the barn took it up, but not for long. By the time I entered the house, the silence was back, outside and inside. The only light in the living room flowed dimly down from the head of the staircase. It touched in a vague outline the painting of her above the fireplace. I waited amid the mohair furniture. She must have heard the dogs and the slam of the screen door, and must know I was in the house. But there was no sign of her presence, no sound from her. The kitchen was dark. I moved over the threadbare rug and shone my flashlight down a short hall. Layla, I called softly. No answer. There was a sense of terror here. Maybe, I thought, because a dark and empty house that should neither be dark nor empty created its own doubt and uneasiness. Or maybe because my imagination was working on stories, heard, and bones Maxine had found very near here. I laughed a little, but it was a silent laughter centered in the pit of my stomach. There was, after all, a dim light at the head of the stairs, a beacon perhaps. I went up the stairs. These creaked too. Rather, they groaned under my feet as if a weary protest at being violated. As I was violating this household, I wasn't much good at this sort of thing. I was plagued with a conscience. I paused. She must have heard that creaking if she was in the house, but she did not come forward or call out when I went in. In the square hall upstairs, I was confronted by 4 closed doors. I opened the nearest and looked into a rather large bedroom. I played the flashlight beam on a double bed and a plain wooden chair. Then I closed the door, glad at any rate that she was not awaiting me in the room, which, no doubt, was the one she shared with her husband. Layla, I called angrily. The silence was digging in under my skin, seeming to quiver against my raw flesh. I kicked open the door and found a bathroom with an ancient, discolored fixture. I swung to the far end of the hall and pushed that door in, and a light greeted me. Not much light. It came from a table lamp, scarcely brighter than a candle, and it reached out as it diffused in a gentle starlight to envelop her, where she stood facing me at a window, the night behind her. I stepped in and closed the door. This was also a bedroom, but smaller than the other one. The bed looked narrower, and the only other furniture it contained was a chest of drawers on which the lamp stood and a chair against the wall. The spare bedroom, the guest bedroom, and I was the guest who sneaked in at night and whom she was receiving in a pale nightgown. Her only response to my interest was to a little smile, a shadow might smile, and I said, hello. It was like a casual greeting in the street between 2 people who didn't know each other well, except that there was a bed with the cover turned down and her half-exposed breasts swelling up in the negligee bodice of the nightgown, which was made of some transparent stuff through which her body shimmered ripely. She must have been standing there for quite some time, watching from the window for my flashlight on the road, and then listening to me fumble my way even closer and closer to her, perhaps savoring the anticipation, even now holding herself withdrawn, making a particular game of it, which she had played from me from the first, a game of holding back until everything pent up in both of us and had to explode. I closed the door, but I did not go to her. It was a game 2 could play. Grinning, I said, what would you have done if I decided you weren't home and had left and not come up here? If you want me enough, you'll always find me. So it's not that much a teasing game as a ritual. Well, that's all right with me. Layla's hands moved slowly around the rich curves of her hips and down and lay spread on her thighs. That nightgown was nylon, a pink mist over her tan body, swelling into it. You're here now, she said with an intensity I'd never heard in her voice before. You're here, and do you have to keep talking? I had a notion to make her come to me, to make her fling herself at me, but there was no point to it. I didn't feel vindictive. 2 strides took me over to her. The nylon slid under my hands. It exuded the luscious warmth of her flesh. I slid down the shoulder straps and pressed her breasts into my face. Her fingers dove into the nape of my neck, and she pushed my mouth up to hers. And in the hungry kiss, she twisted herself and me with her around to the bed and fell back onto it without releasing me. Somewhere around midnight, I stood at the window buttoning my shirt. The dim table lamp was on, and it had not been off at any time. On the bed she slept. A breeze touched the coolness, had swirled in a while ago, and she had pulled up the blanket, but lay on it only as far as her hips. Absently, I wondered what had happened to the pink nightgown. I could not recall at just one moment it had completely disappeared. I lit a cigarette and tossed the match out through the window. The new moon had risen enough out to outline the squatting barn and beyond it. Against the darker sky of the stars, the knoll from which that afternoon I had looked in its direction. "Are you afraid of him?" she said. She had awakened, or perhaps she had not really been asleep. Her arm remained limply on the pillow where I had shifted it across from my chest and left it on the bed. Her mouth and jaw were slack with sleep or something else, but there was no sleep in her dark eyes that caught sultry glints of light like sparks from the lamp. "Afraid?" I echoed. I thought I knew very well what she meant. "He won't be back till tomorrow afternoon." Scorn tinged her voice. "You can stop worrying." "You're the one who's worrying. What makes you so scared of him?" "Me? Any psychologist will tell you that you talk so much about me being afraid of him because you're the one who really is." She started to yawn and pushed her face into the pillow to stifle it. She spoke against the pillow. "You dressed, though there's no need to leave yet. Then you say I'm afraid." "I've been here 3 hours," I argued. "I figured that was enough for a night like this." She kicked the blanket off and stretched sensuously. Maybe that wasn't a deliberate attempt to express what no words could say anywhere near as convincingly. But it did the trick. She was at her best like this, in firelight or with the glow of a very dim bulb, enveloping her in the caressing highlighted shadows. I wanted to bury my face in her flesh and tell her that I loved her. With any other woman at such time, it would have been the natural thing to do, but somehow not with her. I knew I would stay, and there was no hurry. I flicked the ashes out the window and brooded upon the humped knoll across the meadows. "How far does your property extend?" I asked. "Why?" I couldn't bring myself to tell her about the bones Maxine had found there. I said, "I took a walk this afternoon, and I saw the house from the knoll back there. That's how I happened to come blundering this way. Does the knoll belong to you?" "This property belongs to Kenneth." "Including the knoll?" "I don't really know. There's about 20 acres, I understand, but I've little idea what they include." She paused. "Why, are you thinking of buying him out? With me throw it in?" That was the first attempt at humor I had heard her make, and she said it with a husky little laugh. But I thought I had detected a bit of acid in her tone. "I'd like to get him away from you," I told her quietly, "in any way I can." Perhaps that was more than I had meant to say, but I couldn't be coldly reasonable standing there by the window and looking down at her uncovered and desirable beyond thought. "No," she said, and turned her face onto the pillow. Nothing more than that. No discussion, no statement about how she felt about me. Impulsively, I had thrown myself at her feet, and all I got in return was the briefest possible negative, followed by the usual silence. "Why don't you ever want to talk?" I said testily. "About what?" "About any subject that comes close to you. Let's start with a simple one. Where do we go from here?" Her hand moved in a mass of loose black hair. "Why should we go anywhere?" "Well, we can't go on like this." She didn't ask why we couldn't, or argue about it, or discuss it. This was another subject simply dropped. With her cheek on the pillow, she watched me. "Come back to bed," she said huskily. So that was the beginning of the end of it. Come back to bed. It wasn't enough, but what did I really want? As I continued to stand there, despising myself and her, she flung her legs to the side of the bed and raised her shoulders as if to get help. Then she sunk back and lay completely limp, her mouth slack and her eyes half closed. "Come to bed," she whispered. I sat on the bed and untied my shoes. She was reaching for me before I could get them off. And this was the only thing we had between us that we shared completely, giving and talking, but only up to a point, only physically. One sheer emotion broke past my throat, and I held her fiercely, gasping, "I love you, Layla, I love you." And though her body and hands and mouth remained passive, she gave me no vocal response, uttered no words to match my own, not even the lies or automatic phrases of romance that are expected at such a time. Nothing but searing ardor of flesh, and a sense that though I had all of her, I had none of her. The night was long, and eventually I slept in the morning and awoke with the sun in my eyes. She was not in my room. The wristwatch told me that it was after 9. I lay in the splash of sunlight and listened to the water run downstairs. Suddenly, I hated being there. I dressed quickly. Layla was frying bacon in the kitchen. Evidently, the only thing she had on besides slippers was what her mother used to call a wrapper. I hadn't seen any woman wear one in years. It was calico and pretty scant, sleeveless, and didn't quite reach her knees. It was faded and slightly soiled. But somehow on her it didn't look bad. It made her appear rather girlish, the way it fitted so snugly and exposed her trim legs and brown arms and tended to fall away from her bosom. I liked the way her black hair hung loosely on her shoulders. She raised her head and said gaily, "Good morning. Breakfast is practically ready." I lifted her chin with a finger and looked into her dark eyes. "Let's hear you say good morning with my name after it." "Why?" "I don't expect you to say that you care for me or even like me or that you'll call me darling or sweetheart. But you've never said my name, and I wonder how it will sound on your lips." "Good morning, Harry," she said with a smile that was very full for her. I kissed her and went to the breakfast table set for 2, and we started to eat breakfast. For a few minutes I had felt as if I were coming down to the first morning of a honeymoon. But that was a fraud. This was another man's house, her husband's house, and soon he would return tonight and he would be with her in that bed in the other bedroom I had glanced into last night. Over the hams and eggs I made a frontal attack. "How do you feel about your husband spending the night in New York with Gail?" "Gail," she said, frowning. "The woman he drove to New York with, who, incidentally, happens to be your ex-wife? It's becoming quite involved, isn't it?" "He took the ride with her because he had to go to New York away on business." "You believe that?" Layla was not disturbed at all. You don't understand, Kenneth. I realize that, but I'm trying to. Of course, we mustn't expect their morals to be better than ours." "That's absurd." A corner of her mouth twitched. "He told me several days ago he had to go to New York. Anyway, he wouldn't look at another woman." "I see," I said. "You prefer to believe that you can eat your cake and have it too." She tossed her loose hair and picked up her coffee pot and poured. "I never knew anyone who jabbered as much as you." "That's right, I talk," I told her bitterly. "I try to complicate things. If I had your sense, I'd take my pleasure and be satisfied." "Well, why not?" she said. In the barn, the dogs set up a clamor. Layla stiffened, listening. "Somebody's coming," she whispered and stood up. She paused with a hand on the back of her chair. Her face was drawn into tense angles. She said, "Don't let anyone see you here," and left the kitchen, hurrying across the living room to intercept whoever it was at the front door. One of the dogs was barking directly under the kitchen window. That would be Major, who hadn't locked in the barn overnight. Abruptly, I stood up. Major would be sticking close to the visitor, and Major was here at the back door. Before I was halfway across the kitchen, a face appeared in the back window, a face that smirked knowingly at me. Well, guys, that is it for chapter 12. I tell you, man, that was a pretty saucy chapter. Yep, that was pretty saucy. So I can't wait to see what's going to happen in chapter 13. And who is at that door? I want to know if you guys vote that it's Dr. Doan that came back early from New York or if it was somebody else. We have to see. All right. It could be Conrad Hickey, the guy that our main character there is staying with. So we have to see who's joining in. Let's see in the chat. Okay, Vinny came in, and then let's see. Tia Fane says, don't forget that Layla invited the ex-wife to lunch. Yes, she did. She did invite the ex-wife to lunch in the last chapter. Hi, Chrissy's Corner. Yes, does Katie do this all the time? Yes, I do, Chrissy. Every Monday, I read a book live, and we are in this book. I have done other chapters of this, so this is chapter 12, but if you want to go back and catch up on the book, there are more chapters on my YouTube channel. I also read a book called Katie and Her Camera. That was my first saucy book from 1950 as well, and I have already completed that book, but that is on my channel to see. All right, great. You're usually cooking dinner at this time. I'm so glad, Chrissy, you're able to do that. Hi, Peterson. Thanks so much for joining. I'm so glad you're here. You're already scandalized. It really is, Peterson. This is that beautiful brooch from LJ, and I just think it is gorgeous. Let's see, did Pete come in? Hi, Pete. If you are here, I might. Oh, Peterson. She's got a lot of swelling. I bet she eats a lot of salt, right? Yeah, this chapter was very fire, very saucy. Sexy time. Yeah. That's what my religion teacher in high school used to say. I'll never forget it. It will always be in my mind. And when it was required to take religion class. And when we got to that chapter, I remember the teacher getting up and she said, okay, class, today we have to talk about sexy time. Will always be stuck in my head. Yeah, a buzzkill, Chrissy. I agree. I need a cigarette. Yep. I think she needs a sign with flashing lights, right? Yeah, where is this going? It's a pretty saucy chapter. Saucy, yes. At least some bacon is getting bacon. Yeah. Bacon, yeah, she's a keeper. She's a keeper with the bacon. I want more. Who's at the door? Yes, we have to know who's at the door. So if you want to find out who's at the door, you got to tune in next week, Monday at 7 o'clock Eastern. I will be reading chapter 13 so we can find out who's at the door. Hi, Jose. Thanks so much for joining us. Yes, 100 degrees. So, yes, and Louis says hi to everybody. So this is a really, really fun book. I've been enjoying reading it. It just gets better all the time. It's very saucy. It's so fun, and I can't wait to see what happens. Now, I'm not reading ahead. Now, I do read, I guess you could technically say ahead, but that's a few minutes before the live. I familiarize myself with the chapter, but I don't read the next chapter until Monday. So I am really learning things as you guys are learning things. I don't read ahead. So I can't tell you how this book is going to end. And I have never read this book all the way through. So I kind of took a gamble just starting doing it live on my channel without reading it first. But it's been really fun. And it seems like it's just going to get more saucy, more scandalous, and more exciting. And I still want to find out what those bones were that Maxine found. Because as you know, our main character, there's a rumor going around that he might have killed his ex-wife. So we have to see if those bones belong to the ex. So lots of things to find out next week. Guys, don't forget that there's a lot coming up this evening on YouTube and our vintage community. So make sure you go check out Tim. And over the years, he's having a live sale with Josie and Ma Duke. And it's just going to be a lot of fun. Vintage live sale. Lots of awesome things. That's coming up at 8 o'clock Eastern. And then George, the Antique Nomad, is having his live premiere at 8 o'clock. And George is always so knowledgeable, always learn so much from our Uncle Professor George. So we definitely got to go check him out. And then, of course, Vintage Rescue Squad, as usual, is on at 8. So lots of things, lots of split screens tonight. And definitely go support everybody that you can. Can you be bribed? No, Barbie, I can't. I don't think so. What did the nun say? So, well, I went to Catholic school, and we had one nun when I was in school there that was a religion teacher. Now, my religion teacher wasn't a nun, but she was very, very funny, and she just, it was inevitable that once you took religion, that one of the topics, would come up about sex and all of that. And I can still hear Mrs. Thurston to this day saying that, all right, class, we're going to be learning about sexy time. It's just, a bunch of high school kids. It's so awkward and embarrassing, when you're that age, and you're all crammed in this classroom, and the teacher gets up and says sexy time. That's something that will always be imprinted in my head. So I think about that sometimes when reading the book. I'm like, oh, Lord. But this is lots of fun. It was great hanging out with you guys tonight. Definitely go check out everything that's coming up this evening. I will be back this Wednesday with some fun content. And this Tuesday at 6 p.m., I'm going to be on Kim's channel, Oh My Vintage Kim, and we are going to be having a vintage live sale together at 6 o'clock Eastern. So I'm very excited about that sale. And then this Wednesday, I'm going to have Mid-Century Maven on Show and Tell from Instagram. And she is going to be showcasing her vintage jewelry collection. So yes, we got to come back for the bling on Wednesday. And I will be having my regular content as well. So Wednesday, I'll be having my premiere at 7. This week, we are continuing my brooch collection. So there's going to be more fun brooches to take a look at. And then on Friday, I've got a really fun vinyl video coming out for you with a Coca-Cola record. So you want to stay tuned for all of that fun from a nun, no less. I know, right? So lots of fun. All right, folks, this is great. This has been a wonderful reading. It's a lot of fun. I'm going to grab some dinner and get settled in for some fun lives this evening. I'll see you in one of the chats. And as always, I hope that you guys will stay in, stay safe, and binge YouTube. Bye-bye now.